David Park stood at the window of the transport ship and watched the alien world grow larger. The planet was called Valana, and it was beautiful in a strange way. The oceans were deep purple, and the land was covered in forests of silvered trees. 3 moons hung in the sky like pale jewels. He was 32 years old, a staff sergeant in the United States Army, and he was about to become the first human to live on an alien world. The thought made his stomach tight with nerves, but he kept his face calm. Soldiers did not show fear. The exchange program had been simple in theory. After first contact with the Valani Empire 2 years ago, both sides wanted to build trust. The Valani asked for 1 human to serve in their diplomatic corps. They wanted to learn about humans, and they wanted humans to learn about them. David had been chosen from thousands of volunteers. His mother had cried when he told her. His father had shaken his hand and told him to make Earth proud. His little sister had punched his arm and told him not to die on some weird alien planet. David smiled at the memory. He missed them already. The transport ship landed in the capital city of the Valani Empire. David stepped out and felt the alien air fill his lungs. It was thinner than Earth air, and it smelled like flowers and copper. The gravity was slightly heavier, making his legs feel tired. A group of Valani soldiers waited for him. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with violet skin and 4 arms. Their faces were almost human, with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, but their eyes were silver and had no pupils. They wore armor made of some dark metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. David walked toward them and stopped. He placed his fist over his heart in a human salute. "Staff Sergeant David Park," he said. "Reporting for duty?" The lead soldier studied him for a long moment. David knew what he saw. A small creature, barely reaching the Valani's chest. Soft skin with no armor or scales. Only 2 arms. The Valani probably wondered how such a weak species had ever survived. "Follow," the soldier said in broken English. David followed. The palace was massive. It rose from the center of the city like a mountain of white stone and crystal. Towers reached toward the sky, and bridges connected them like spider webs. Thousands of Valani walked through the halls, all of them stopping to stare at the human. David kept his eyes forward and his back straight. He had been stared at before. He could handle it. They brought him to a great hall. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Pillars of carved stone lined the walls, and banners hung between them, showing symbols David did not understand. At the far end of the hall sat a throne made of crystal, and on that throne sat the queen. Queen Isolara was different from the other Valani David had seen. Where they were tall and strong, she was graceful and slender. Her violet skin was lighter, almost lavender, and her silver eyes seemed to glow with inner light. She wore robes of white and gold, and a crown of twisted silver sat upon her head. She was beautiful, David realized. Alien and strange, but beautiful. He walked forward and stopped at the proper distance. He bowed low, the way he had been taught. "Your Majesty," he said, "I am honored to be here." The queen studied him with those silver eyes. Her 4 hands rested on the arms of her throne, and her fingers tapped slowly against the crystal. "You are the human they sent," she said. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes. Smaller than I imagined, softer. David straightened. "With respect, Your Majesty, humans have a saying. Do not judge a book by its cover." A murmur went through the court. Several advisors leaned forward with angry expressions. No one spoke to the queen this way, but Queen Isolara smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but David saw it. "And what lies beneath your cover?" "Sergeant Park," she asked. "I hope to show you, Your Majesty." The queen nodded slowly. "We shall see. You will be assigned quarters in the palace. You will observe our ways and report to your people. And perhaps we will learn something about humans." David bowed again. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As the guards led him away, David felt the Queen's eyes on his back. He did not know why, but he felt that this assignment would change his life forever. The first weeks were difficult. Everything was strange. The food was strange. The customs were strange. The way people looked at him was strange. David felt alone in a way he had never felt before. But he was a soldier, and soldiers adapted. He learned the Vallani language quickly. He studied their history and their culture. He watched and listened and took notes. And slowly, the Vallani began to accept him. He learned that the empire was old, thousands of years old, and that it was held together by tradition. He learned that Queen Solara was young for a ruler, only 80 years old, which was like being 30 in human years. He learned that she had ideas for change, for making life better for common people, and that many powerful Vallani did not like this. He learned that she was kind. She visited the sick. She spoke with servants as if they were equals. She remembered names and faces and stories. In a court full of cold politicians, she was warm. David found himself looking forward to their meetings. At first, they were formal. The Queen would ask about Earth, about human culture, about his family. David would answer carefully, always respectful. But over time, the conversations became more natural. The Queen had a curious mind and a sharp sense of humor. She laughed at David's jokes, even the bad ones. She asked questions that made him think deeply about his own world. "Your people fight many wars," she observed one evening. "Why?" David thought about it. "We are afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of being hurt, afraid of losing what we have, afraid of those who are different. Fear makes us fight. And yet you came here alone to a world of strangers. Were you not afraid?" "I was terrified," David said. "But I came anyway." That is what humans do. We feel fear, but we do not let it stop us. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. "Your species is unexpected, David Park." It was the first time she had used his first name. David felt something warm in his chest, something he could not name. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said. She smiled that small smile. "You may call me Solara." "When we are alone." David returned the smile. "Thank you, Solara." He did not know it then, but that moment was the beginning of everything. 3 months passed on Vallana. David Park had learned to call this strange world his temporary home. He knew the hallways of the palace like he knew the streets of his hometown. He recognized faces and remembered names. The servant smiled at him now instead of staring, but something was wrong. David could feel it in his bones. It started with small things. A guard who looked away too quickly when David passed. A door that was locked when it should have been open. Whispers that stopped when he entered a room. David had been trained to notice these things. In the army, paying attention to details could save your life. A strange shadow could be an enemy. An unusual sound could be a trap. The small things mattered. He began to watch more carefully. General Vorn was the commander of the Queen's personal guard. He was tall even for a Vallani, with dark violet skin and cold silver eyes. He had served the royal family for over 100 years, and everyone trusted him completely. David did not trust in Dot. It was nothing obvious. General Vorn was always polite, always proper. He bowed to the Queen and called her by her titles. He gave orders to his soldiers, and they obeyed without question. But David noticed that Vorn's eyes did not match his words. When he bowed to the Queen, there was no respect in his face. When he spoke to her, there was something hidden behind his voice. Something cold. Something dangerous. David also noticed that Vorn met often with Commander Thilos, the head of palace security. They spoke in quiet corners, and they always stopped talking when anyone came near. Once, David saw Thilos hand Vorn a small device, and Vorn hid it quickly in his armor. David's instincts screamed at him. something bad was coming. He began to investigate in secret. He could not ask questions openly because he did not know who to trust. Instead, he watched and listened. He learned the patrol schedules of the guards. He noted which soldiers were loyal to Vorn and which were loyal to the Queen. The numbers worried him. Too many guards followed Vorn. Too few seemed truly devoted to Queen Isolara. One night, David found a way into the communication center. He was not supposed to be there, but he had learned that rules sometimes needed to be broken. He searched through the records and found encrypted messages between Vorn and several noble families. The messages were coded, but David recognized military patterns. They were planning something. His heart pounded as he copied the files. He needed to warn the Queen. He went to her private chambers late at night. The guards at her door knew him and let him pass. Inside, Queen Isolara sat by a window, looking out at the three moons. She turned when he entered. "David, what is wrong?" He told her everything. The strange behavior of the guards, the secret meetings, the encrypted messages. His fear that a conspiracy was forming against her died, while Isolara listened in silence. Her silver eyes grew darker as he spoke. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "You speak of treason among my most trusted," she finally said. Her voice was heavy with pain. "I speak of patterns," David replied. "And patterns do not lie. I do not have proof yet, but I am certain something is happening. General Vorn is at the center of it. Vorn has served my family since before I was born. He protected my mother. He protected my grandmother. Why would he betray me?" David stepped closer. "Your reforms, Isolara. You want to change things. You want to give power to common people. There are nobles who hate this. They see their power slipping away, and they are scared." Isolara closed her eyes. "I knew there would be resistance. I did not think it would come from within my own walls." "Let me help," David said. "Let me find the proof you need. I can move around the palace without suspicion. Everyone thinks I am just a curious human. They do not see me as a threat." The Queen looked at him with those glowing silver eyes. "Why do you care, David? This is not your world. This is not your fight. If there is danger, you could leave. Your people would take you home." David met her gaze without looking away. "Because where I come from, we do not abandon people who need help. It is not about flags or borders or species. It is about what is right." Isolara stared at him. Her expression was strange, like she was seeing him for the first time. "Your species is truly unexpected," she whispered. "Is that a yes?" David asked. A small smile touched her lips. "Yes, David Park. Find me the truth." David threw himself into the investigation. By day, he continued his normal duties. He attended meetings and wrote reports and smiled at everyone. By night, he became a shadow. He followed General Vorn through the palace. He listened at doors and watched through windows. He made friends with servants who saw everything but were never noticed. They told him stories. Stories of secret meetings and angry voices. Stories of money changing hands. Slowly, the picture became clear. General Vorn and Commander Thalos were planning a coup. They had support from several noble families who hated the Queen's reforms. They had bribed or threatened many of the palace guards. They were waiting for the right moment to strike. David brought his findings to the Queen. She read his reports with a face like stone. "The Festival of Twin Moons," she said quietly. "It is in 2 weeks. The palace will be full of visitors. Security will be spread thin. That is when they will move." David nodded. "We need to act first. Arrest Vorn and Thalos before they can." "No." Isolara shook her head. "I cannot arrest the commander of my own guard without proof that will convince the council. If I move against him and fail, it will only make things worse. I will seem paranoid and weak. Then what do we do?" The queen was silent. For a moment, she looked very young and very tired. "I do not know," she admitted. "I do not know who I can trust. My own guards may turn against me. My own advisors may be part of this." She looked at David. "You may be the only person in this palace who is truly on my side." David felt the weight of those words. This was not his world, not his fight, not his responsibility. He could walk away. He could go home to Earth and forget all of this. But he looked at Isolara, at her fear and her courage, and he knew he could not leave. "Then I will stay by your side," he said. "Whatever happens." Isolara reached out and touched his face with one of her hands. Her skin was cool and smooth. "You are a good man, David Park, better than most. I am just trying to do what is right. That is what makes you good." They stood there in the moonlight, the human and the alien queen, and neither of them knew that in 2 weeks, everything would change. The conspiracy was moving forward. The traitors were preparing, and David Park was running out of time. But he would not give up. He would find a way to protect the queen or die trying. That was what humans did. The Festival of Twin Moons arrived with music and light. The palace was more beautiful than David had ever seen it. Colored lanterns hung from every tower. Flowers covered the walls in cascades of silver and gold. The air smelled of sweet perfume, and exotic foods. Thousands of Volani filled the halls. Nobles in fine robes walked beside merchants in colorful clothes. Children ran and laughed. Musicians played strange instruments that made sounds like singing birds. Everyone was happy. Everyone except David Park. He moved through the crowd with his hand near his weapon. His eyes scanned every face, looking for signs of danger. He had not slept well in days. Every night, he dreamed of blood and screaming. The queen was in the grand ballroom, greeting her guests. She wore robes of pure white, and her crown sparkled in the light. She smiled and spoke kind words to everyone who approached her. She looked calm and beautiful, but David knew the truth. He could see the tension in her shoulders. He could see the fear hidden behind her smile. General Vorn stood near the queen with 20 of his best soldiers. He was dressed in formal armor, polished until it shone. He smiled and laughed with the noble guests. He looked like a loyal protector. David wanted to put a knife in his chest. The hours passed slowly. David stayed close to the queen, always watching, always ready. Nothing happened. The music played. The guests danced. The moons rose higher in the sky. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe there would be no attack tonight. Maybe. The first explosion came from the eastern wing. The sound was enormous, shaking the walls and cracking the windows. Guests screamed and ran in all directions. The music stopped. Guards shouted orders that no one could hear. David grabbed the queen's arm. "We need to move. Now." More explosions followed. Fire bloomed in the distance, orange and hungry. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. General Vorn appeared beside them. "Your Majesty, we must get you to safety. My soldiers will protect you." David did not trust him, but there was no time to argue. They needed to get the queen away from the chaos. Vor led them through secret passages that David did not know existed. The sounds of fighting grew distant. The air became cleaner. After many turns, they arrived at the queen's private chambers. 20 of Vorn's soldiers surrounded them in a tight circle. They stood with weapons ready, watching the doors. "We will wait here until the threat is ended," Vorn announced. "My soldiers will guard every entrance." The queen nodded. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Thank you, General. Find out who is responsible for this attack." Vorn smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I already know, Your Majesty." David felt cold spread through his body. The way Vorn spoke, the way the soldiers shifted, the way they were now standing between the queen and the doors. "What are you doing?" David demanded. Vorn ignored him. He kept his eyes on the queen. The attack was a distraction. It served its purpose. "Now we can speak privately." Azalara's silver eyes went wide. "Vorn, what is this?" The general drew his weapon. It was a long blade that hummed with energy. The soldiers behind him did the same. "The Council of Noble Houses has made a decision," Vorn said. His voice was cold as ice. "Your reforms threaten our way of life. You give power to common people and take it from those who deserve it. You weaken the empire with your foolish dreams of equality." "This is treason," Isalara whispered. "This is survival," Vorn replied. "Step down peacefully, and you will be exiled to a distant moon. You can live out your days in comfort. Resist, and you will die here tonight." David stepped forward, putting himself between Vorn and the queen. His heart pounded like a drum. "You will not touch her," he said. Vorn laughed. It was an ugly sound. "The human speaks. How amusing. Do you think you can stop us? You are small and weak and alone. I am serious. Let the queen go, and maybe you survive this night." The soldiers laughed. Even the queen stared at David with worried eyes. "David, please," she said softly. "Do not throw your life away." But David did not move. He stood tall and met Vorn's eyes without fear. "I will not abandon her," he said simply. "So you will have to kill me first." Vorn's smile faded. He looked at his soldiers. "Take the queen. Kill the human." The soldiers moved forward. 20 armed Vellani warriors, each one twice David's size. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. David waited. He thought of his mother and father. He thought of his sister. He thought of home. Then he stopped thinking and started fighting. The first soldier swung his blade in a wide arc. David ducked under it and drove his fist into the soldier's throat. The Vellani choked and stumbled. David grabbed the fallen blade and kept moving. He was smaller than them. That was his advantage. He could move in spaces they could not reach. He ducked and twisted and rolled between their attacks. Their weapons cut the air above his head. A blade sliced his arm. Pain exploded through his body. Blood ran down his skin, red and warm. But David did not stop. He cut the legs of one soldier and smashed the face of another. He used their bodies as shields, pushing them into each other. He was not fighting to win. He was fighting to survive long enough for help to arrive. But no help came. The queen's other guards, the ones not under Vorn's command, did nothing. They stood at the edges of the room and watched. Their faces showed no emotion. "Your Majesty," one of them said quietly, "we are sorry. We have families. We have children. We cannot fight against the noble houses." They stepped aside. Every single one of them. Izalara's face crumpled with disbelief. Her entire guard, every soldier sworn to protect her, had abandoned her in her moment of need. All except one. David Park, bleeding and bruised, stood alone before the queen. His stolen blade dripped with purple blood. His breath came in ragged gasps, but his eyes burned with fire. "You want her?" he growled. "Come and take her." Vorn stared at him. Something like surprise flickered in his silver eyes. He had expected the human to run. He had expected him to surrender. He had not expected this. "Why do you fight?" Vorn demanded. "She is not your queen. This is not your world. Why die for her?" David smiled. It was a dangerous smile, full of teeth. "Because I made a promise," he said. "And humans keep their promises." He raised his blade and charged. The battle for Queen Isalara had begun. David Park moved like water through fire. His body was a weapon, trained by years of human warfare, and he used every skill he had ever learned. The Vellani were strong. They had 4 arms and stood 7 feet tall. Their muscles could crush stone, and their weapons could cut through metal. One of them should have been able to kill David easily, but they had never fought a human before. Humans were different. They came from a world where everything wanted to kill them. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. For millions of years, humans had survived by being clever, quick, and stubborn. They learned to fight not with strength, but with skill. David used their size against them. When a soldier swung at him, he stepped inside the attack, too close for the weapon to hit. He struck at joints and pressure points, places where nerves clustered together. A hit to the elbow made an arm go numb. A kick to the knee made a leg collapse. A punch to the throat stopped the breath. 3 soldiers fell in the first minute, but there were still 17 more. A blade cut David's side. The pain was like fire, burning through his body. He felt blood pour down his hip, warm and wet. He ignored it. Pain was just information. It told him he was still alive. He grabbed the arm of the soldier who had cut him and twisted. The joint popped. The soldier screamed and dropped his weapon. David took the weapon and kept moving. "Stay behind me," he shouted to the queen. Isolara pressed herself against the wall. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. She had never seen anything like this. No Vellani fought this way. No Vellani moved this fast. The small, soft human was cutting through trained soldiers like they were children. General Vorn watched from the back of the room. His face was dark with anger. "Kill him," he roared. "He is one human. Kill him." The soldiers attacked together. They came from all sides, blades swinging. David could not dodge them all. A weapon cut his leg. Another sliced his back. A fist crashed into his jaw, sending him spinning. He hit the ground hard. Blood filled his mouth. The world spun around him. "Get up," he told himself. "Get up or she dies." He pushed himself to his feet. His legs shook. His vision blurred. But he raised his blade and faced the enemy. "Is that all you have?" he gasped. A soldier rushed him. David waited until the last moment, then dropped to his knees. The blade passed over his head. He drove his own weapon up into the soldier's chest. Purple blood sprayed his face. He pulled the blade free and stood again. 12 soldiers remained. The room was chaos. Bodies lay on the floor, groaning in pain. Purple blood pooled on the white marble. The smell of copper and sweat filled the air. David's arms were heavy. Each breath hurt. He had taken too many wounds. He was losing blood too fast. He would not last much longer. But he did not stop. A soldier grabbed him from behind, all 4 arms wrapping around his body. David felt his ribs crack. The pressure was crushing. He could not breathe. He threw his head back, smashing his skull into the soldier's face. The grip loosened. David twisted free and drove his elbow into the soldier's eye. The Vellani fell back, screaming. 11 soldiers. Then 10, then 9. David's body moved on instinct. He was no longer thinking. There was no fear, no pain, no memory. There was only the next enemy, the next attack, the next moment. This was what humans became when they had nothing left to lose. This was what millions of years of survival had created. Not a fighter, a force of nature. General Vorn finally stepped forward. His blade glowed with energy, brighter than the others. He was bigger than his soldiers and better trained. He was the deadliest warrior in the Vellani Empire. "Enough," he said coldly. "I will kill you myself." David faced him. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. His clothes were soaked with blood, red and purple mixed together. He could barely stand, but he smiled. "You can try," he said. Vorn attacked with all 4 arms. His blades moved faster than eyes could follow. He was not playing anymore. He wanted this human dead. David blocked the first strike and dodged the second. The third cut his shoulder to the bone. The fourth missed his throat by inches. He stumbled back. Vorn pressed forward, swinging again and again. David could only defend. He had no strength left to attack. A blade sliced his chest. Another cut his arm. His stolen weapon fell from his numb fingers. Vorn kicked him in the stomach. David flew backward and crashed into the wall. He slid down, leaving a smear of blood on the stone. "Stay down," Vorn ordered. "You have fought well, human. Better than I believed possible. But it is over." David looked up at him. His eyes could barely focus. His body screamed for him to stop, to give up, to rest. But behind Vorn, he could see the queen. Isolara stood with her back against the wall, tears streaming down her face. She was watching him die for her. David thought of his promise. He thought of his family. He thought of every human who had ever fought against impossible odds and refused to surrender. He put his hands on the floor and pushed himself up. His legs shook. His arms trembled. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds. But he stood. "No," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "It is not over." Vorn stared at him. For the first time, there was something like fear in his eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. David raised his fists. He had no weapon. He had no strength. He had nothing but his will. "I am human," he said, "and we do not quit." He charged. Vorn swung his blade. David did not try to dodge. The weapon cut deep into his side. But David kept moving. He crashed into Vorn with all his weight, knocking them both to the ground. They rolled across the bloody floor, punching and clawing. David's fists struck Vorn's face again and again. Vorn's arms wrapped around David, crushing and tearing. David felt his body breaking. His ribs cracked. His vision went dark. But he did not stop hitting. Somewhere far away, he heard shouting, running feet, weapons charging. Then everything went black. The last thing David Park felt was his fist connecting with General Vorn's jaw. The last thing he heard was the queen screaming his name. Then there was nothing but darkness and silence. David Park opened his eyes to white light. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then the pain hit him like a wave, and he knew he was still alive. Death would not hurt this much. He was lying in a soft bed in a room made of crystal. Sunlight poured through the walls, filling the space with warmth. Machines beeped quietly beside him, displaying symbols he did not understand. He tried to move and gasped. His entire body was wrapped in bandages. He could feel stitches pulling at his skin in 100 places. "Do not move." The voice was soft and familiar. David turned his head slowly. Queen Isolara sat in a chair beside his bed. Her silver eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Her robes were simple, without the usual golden jewels. She looked tired and beautiful. "How long?" David whispered. His throat was dry as sand. 3 days, Isolara said. "The doctors were not sure you would wake. They said your wounds should have killed you. They said no Vellani could have survived what you survived." She paused. "But you are not Vellani." David tried to smile. His face hurt. "What happened?" "Vorn? Arrested. He's in the deepest prison of the Empire. His soldiers have been captured. The noble families who supported him are being questioned." Isolara's voice hardened. "They will face justice for what they did. The guards who abandoned you." Isolara was quiet for a moment. "They have been removed from service. They will never hold positions of trust again." She looked down at her hands. "But I do not hate them. They were afraid. They have families who would have suffered. I understand fear." David closed his eyes. He remembered the fight. The blood. The pang. The moment when every guard had stepped aside and left the queen to die. "I do not understand fear," he said quietly. "Not like that. Not when someone needs help." Isolara reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool against his. "No," she said. "You do not. That is what makes you extraordinary." They sat in silence for a while. The machines beeped. The sun moved slowly across the sky. David drifted in and out of sleep, always waking to find Isolara still there. Days passed. David healed slowly. His body had suffered terrible damage, but human medicine and Vellani technology worked together to repair what was broken. Soon he could sit up, then stand, then walk. Through it all, Isolara visited every day. The story of David's stand spread across the galaxy like fire. News networks carried the tale to every corner of known space. A single human, armed with only a stolen blade, had fought 20 trained Vellani soldiers to protect a queen who was not even his own. He had taken wounds that would have killed anyone else. He had kept fighting when all hope was lost. He had refused to surrender even when his body was broken. And in the end, his desperate attack had distracted General Vorn long enough for loyal forces to arrive. Forces that David himself had secretly contacted with an emergency beacon hidden in his uniform. He had planned for this. He had known that he might need to buy time for help to come. He had accepted that he might die doing it. The galaxy was amazed. Diplomats from a dozen species requested meetings. Scientists wanted to study human endurance. Warriors wanted to learn how he fought. Everyone wanted to know more about this strange species called humanity. David refused all of them. He was not interested in fame, but there was one meeting he could not refuse. The Council of the Vellani Empire gathered in the Great Hall. Hundreds of nobles sat in rows of crystal seats. The queen stood before them on her throne. David stood beside her, still wearing bandages, supported by a cane. "We are here to honor a hero," Queen Isolara announced. Her voice rang through the hall. "When my own guards abandoned me, when my own people betrayed me, one person stood between me and death. Not a Vellani, a human." She turned to David. In her hands, she held a medal made of silver and gold. It was shaped like a star, with a purple gem at its center. "David Park," she said formally, "I name you Knight of the Vellani Empire. This is the highest honor we can give to any being, Vellani or otherwise. You have earned it with your blood and your courage." She placed the medal around his neck. The crowd applauded, but David barely heard them. "I did not do it for honors," he said quietly, so only she could hear. Isolara smiled. "I know. That is why you deserve them." After the ceremony, they walked together through the palace gardens. The silver trees swayed in the wind. The 3 moons rose slowly into the purple sky. "What will you do now?" Isolara asked. "Your mission is complete. Your people will want you home." David thought about it. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the life he had left behind. Then he looked at Isolara, at her silver eyes and gentle smile, at the world she was trying to build, where everyone was equal and everyone mattered. "I think I will stay," he said, "if you will have me." Isolara's eyes widened. "You would stay here?" "On an alien world, among strange people, far from everything you know?" "I would stay with you," David said simply. "If you want me to." Isolara did not speak. She did not need to. She simply took his hand in 2 of hers and held it tight. They stood there in the garden, the human and the queen, watching the moons rise. The galaxy had learned something important that day. They had learned that humans were not weak. They were not soft. They were not simple. They were stubborn and brave and loyal beyond reason. They fought for what they believed in, even when they had no chance of winning. They kept their promises, even when it cost them everything. The Villani Empire would never forget what David Park had done. Neither would the rest of the galaxy. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. Humans lived such short lives, but when the guards abandoned her, when all hope was lost, when death itself came knocking, a human remained. And that made all the difference.